the worst real estate market in America. That's what the Wall Street Journal just called Cape Coral. Not struggling, not cooling off, but the absolute worst. We've made a lot of headlines over the years, but this one, it stings and people are talking. My inbox has been blowing up with messages from YouTube viewers like you asking, Barry, is this true? Is Cape Coral really crashing? What does this mean if I'm trying to buy, sell, or invest here? So in this video, I'm breaking it all down, paragraph by paragraph, and separating the facts from the fear-mongering. Because if you know me, you know I follow the numbers, and the numbers, they tell a very different story than the headline. Now, if you're serious about understanding what's actually happening in Cape Coral real estate, this is the video you don't want to skip. And if you want the full July 2025 market update, that link is waiting for you in the description below. I'm Berry Cessna, your Cape Coral waterfront realtor. Now, if you're thinking about buying, selling, relocating, or retiring here in Cape Coral, tap the link below to schedule a strategy call or just shoot me a text. Now, let's get into the article and uncover what the Wall Street Journal got right, what they stretched, and what they got completely wrong. I'm really excited to dive into this article by the Wall Street Journal calling Cape Coral the worst real estate market in America. We're going to pick it apart. We're going to go through each paragraph and really dive deep. And I'm going to give you some insight, some facts, some numbers, and we're really going to get an understanding of what's truly happening here in the Cape Coral real estate market. This article was a bit strong. Is it as bad as they make it out to be? Not really. Are there some challenges here? Absolutely. So let's dive in and find out exactly what's going on here in the real estate market in Cape Coral. So first up, they really started off strong. They put the quintessential Cape Coral photo. This is the Gloriana Canal right here. You have boats in your backyard, beautiful homes on the canals, and then Tarpon Point there at the end of the canal. Absolutely beautiful view of Cape Coral and what Cape Coral truly is all about. That's why we live here. That's why we love it here. If you're a boater, you love being on the water, Cape Coral's absolutely amazing. But then as we scroll down just a bit, it turns into not so nice. The worst housing market in America is now Florida's Cape Coral. Home prices have been battered by everything from overbuilding to insurance costs. Realtors warn there's further to fall. Okay, let's jump in. First up, it talks about Cape Coral, Florida. They came in droves via Zoom. Thousands found an inexpensive slice of paradise in Cape Coral, a city with more canals than anywhere else in the world. House hunters were so taken with this boating community on Florida's west coast that many purchased homes sight unseen during the early years of the pandemic. Well, back during the pandemic, many people were flooding to Florida. They love Florida. They discovered Cape Coral as this incredible slice of paradise, and it was very affordable. So many conversations were happening through Zoom during the pandemic. And even now, today, a lot of my business comes through Zoom. A lot of folks from up north, whether they're selling or buying or just learning more about Cape Coral, book strategic phone calls through Zoom. Zoom's a great platform to use. However, purchase home sight unseen is highly unrecommended. I don't recommend that at all. We have strategies and a system in place to help get homes under contract, and then you fly down to confirm that it's exactly what you want before proceeding further with the closing. Thousands found an inexpensive slice of paradise. Yes, Cape Coral was affordable and still is affordable compared to many other markets in Florida and the United States. The ability to park your boat in your backyard and go out to open water is absolutely incredible. We do have more canals than any other city in the world with over 400 miles of navigable canals. House hunters were taken with this boating community in Florida's west coast. So absolutely incredible. And yes, many people did purchase sight unseen. Most were very happy with their purchases, some not so much. In that market, homes were flying off the market so fast, they'd hit the market, they'd be on the market for just a couple of days, and then they'd be off the market under contract. Homes were getting bid up as well with multiple offers. It was a crazy time, the Wild West here in Cape Coral in 2021 and 2022. However, times have changed. The median price soared nearly 75% to $419,000 in 3 years, transforming the character of this middle-income community that for decades has catered to retirees and small investors. It is true, we attract lots of folks retiring. A lot of second homeowners here in Cape Coral as well. So our market is driven by retirees and second homeowners. However, during the pandemic, we started to attract a lot of folks that could work from home. That was very appealing as more and more people were able to work from home, and they did flock to Cape Coral as well. And we do attract a lot of families. Cape Coral is a very diverse city. It's not just retirees here. We do have a lot of folks that are retired living here, but we also have a lot of families here as well. 75% to 419,000 in 3 years. Well, let's go ahead and take a look. I want to show you this graph right here. So these are the actual numbers. In April 2020, our median price point for a single family home in Cape Coral was $250,000. Just 2 years later, it sprung up to $465,000 in 2022. That was April of 2022. That was a huge increase, actually an 86% increase. Absolutely incredible. So from April 2020 to April 2022, we jumped 86% to $465,000. Let's get back to the article. Now, 3 years later, for sale signs line every block. Open houses are deserted for hours. Foreclosures are ticking up. Home builders are listing half-built shells at discounts as they abandon projects to cut losses. Locals say the lack of traffic has led to an increase in vehicles speeding through empty residential streets. Wow, there's a lot to unpack in this paragraph, and we're going to do it step by step. 3 years later, for sale signs line every other block. It is true. There's a lot more homes for sale now than there were 3 years ago. Even 1 year ago, we saw an increase in inventory. As a matter of fact, let's go ahead and explore that. Currently in the city of Cape Coral, we have 2,994 single-family homes on the market for sale right now. We peaked in February at 3,515. As you can see, we've come down over 500 homes in the last few months. Our inventory is going down right now, not up. Now, will that continue that way as we get into the slower months? Not likely. We'll probably start to spring up just a little bit. However, as we get back into season next year, that's going to tell us a lot about what's happening in the market. So what was the inventory back in 2022 at the peak? Let's go ahead and scroll on down here, and we are at 1,219 in May 2022. That was our inventory. So from 1,219 to where we sit today, 2,994 single-family homes in the market. That's a huge jump for sure. Okay, let's take a look at this. Open houses are deserted for hours. Now, it is true, we're starting to get into our down season. So we're not getting as many buyers here in the area right now. During season, when the buyers were here in February, March, April, we start to see lots of people in those open houses. However, understanding the market here in Cape Coral, we start to slow up once we get into the middle and end of summer and into the fall. So those open houses definitely do not attract as many people. So I would say this is more seasonal than just being deserted for hours. That sounds awful, but it is. There is some truth during this time of year, and as we get into the falls, when we do the open houses, we often do sit there for quite a bit of time without people coming through. Foreclosures are ticking up. Well, that is true. They are starting to tick up, but let's look at the actual numbers because this is quite astonishing. Here we are on the foreclosure numbers. Now, these are homes that were listed as foreclosures on the market here in the city of Cape Coral, single family home. Back in 2015, look at this, 201, 204, 182. This is in the month. How many homes were listed at that time? And then once we got into 2016, 17, 18, it was averaging about 70 to 50, 40, 46, 66, 44, 2019, 2020. And then right around the middle of 2020, when the pandemic was in full force, there was a moratorium put on foreclosure. So homes could not be foreclosed on. And that number dropped substantially to foreclosed homes sitting on the market. So what's happening now? Let's go ahead and take a look as we dive on down. And that we're sitting at 2025, 10 homes, 12 homes on the market, 16, 19, 17, 13. So yeah, it's definitely ticking up from where we were a year ago. But is it something to be concerned about? Is it something that we should actually be really concerned about? Absolutely not. I mean, look at the numbers that we were seeing before the pandemic. Incredible numbers, like huge compared to where we are now. So certainly we are ticking up just a bit, but not something to be concerned about. Not a lot of foreclosures here in the city of Cape Coral. Now there are some, but not a lot. If we go back to 2021, that moratorium actually was released, I believe it was June of 2021, where foreclosures could not be put on to homeowners. However, that's been gone for several years now, and we can see where we've been and how the market's played out. And we're just now starting to tick up just a bit, but certainly not a concern by any means. We've got over 240,000 people living here and only 13 houses in foreclosure listed on the market. That's a pretty low number. Home builders are listing half-built shells at discounts as they abandon projects to cut losses. Now, there is some truth to that. There are some abandoned homes, especially if you drive around the northern part of Cape Coral, you will discover some homes that never were completed. But are we seeing lots and lots? Tens, 20s, hundreds, thousands? Absolutely not. I just checked the MLS, and right now listed on the MLS, half-built homes, these shells of homes, we've probably got about 9 or 10 on there of all the homes that we have listed. And there's different reasons why those homes may never have been finished. A lot of it has to do with lenders stopped giving builders loans. Probably about 2 or 3 years ago, they started making it really difficult to get those loans to build homes here. And so if builders did not have the correct financing in place, and then they ran out of money midway through, they just sat there because there was no money to complete the project. But that happens in any market. Are we seeing more now than before? A few, but it's certainly, like I said, there's only about 9 or 10 I was able to count on the MLS out of those almost 3,000 homes available for sale right now. And there are a few more around the city of Cape Coral, but it's certainly not a ghost town, and it's not that we are just, builders are stopping building, because we still have about 120 to 150 new construction homes coming to the market every single month. Builders are completing homes. So it's just a very minor, small number that aren't getting completed. And it's not as bad as they make it out to be. This is a funny one. So locals say the lack of traffic has led to an increase in vehicles speeding through empty residential streets. That makes it sound like we're a ghost town, like we don't have anybody living here anymore. The traffic is just, there's no traffic, but there was a lot of traffic before, but now there's not any traffic. Well, that's just not the case. We do tend to have, if you look at the Cape Coral community groups on Facebook, you will notice that we tend to have a traffic problem here. There tends to be a little bit of speeding going on. However, the city of Cape Coral is addressing that. They're putting up some speed cams and different things like that to make sure that they pull things under control. Not that it's out of control, but the group makes it sound like we have crazy traffic, but it's certainly not from a lack of vehicles on the roads that's making it possible for people to speed here in Cape Coral. Anywhere you drive, we have over 240,000 people living here. That's a lot of people. We have a lot of cars on the road. We certainly aren't rush hour traffic like LA, but we do have a lot of people living here. And the roads are not empty by any means, especially if you're going over to Fort Myers in the morning, you're coming home in the evening, you have traffic backed up. So lack of traffic has led to increase in vehicle speeding. Absolutely not true. Cape Coral is the worst housing market in America right now. There may be some truth to that, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad thing. I don't think we're at the bottom yet. I think there's some truth to that too. I don't think we're quite at the bottom yet. I think we're very close. I think anytime, if you understand the cycle of the real estate market in Cape Coral and how it works throughout the year, typically we see prices rise in February, March, April, May. That's during our season. That's when the most amount of people are here from out of town, the snowbirds, retirees, second homeowners. That's here when they're here buying. It's cold up north. They don't want to be there. They want to be here. And so they come down and they buy in droves. And that's where we see the most amount of sales. However, as we get into the middle of August and then our September, October, those are the slowest months of the year for us. That's where we see the fewest amount of buyers here in the area. And we typically see prices drop just a smidge around that time. However, is now the best time to buy? I think once we go around the corner, prices are going to start rising again. There's a lot of different factors that are going to play into that, from a market that has some certainty, not uncertainty like we're seeing right now. Once we get interest rates lowered, I know they're working on trying to get that knocked out, then we will see prices start to go up again. But I don't think we're at the bottom yet. I think we're close, but I don't think we're there. But I wouldn't be waiting to buy. I'm actually looking to buy a home right now for myself, just because I think it's an awesome time to buy, especially as we go into the next couple of months. There's going to be some great opportunities. And sellers, because of articles like this, if you're a seller right now, you do need to price your home accordingly, but you don't need to panic. Articles like this tend to make sellers panic, and that's never good. But it does give buyers incredible opportunities to come in and to find those those sellers that are panicking a little bit. And I've been able to find some of those sellers for my buyers, and they've gotten some incredible deals right now where they've gotten discounts of like 7, 8, 9% off the list price, where I don't think they would have gotten they're not going to get those same discounts if they wait, because eventually the market's going to start coming back around. And I don't see it dropping another 9%, 10%, 11%. I think we're pretty close to the bottom. Home prices for Cape Coral, Fort Myers have tumbled 11% in the 2 years through May, the most of any major metro area, according to analysis for the Wall Street Journal by the listing site homes.com. Let's jump back to the screen and show prices and take a look. So here we are, single family median price point for Cape Coral. And this is just for Cape Coral because this is what I'm doing. That's where I focus on, is Cape Coral. I focus on single family. I don't do condos as often. I can certainly help you, but that's not one of my focuses. My focus is single family homes because I believe that gives us the biggest and best sampling of what the market's actually doing. So let's go year over year. Year over year, last year in June, we were at 392,500. This year in June, we were at 372,500. So we did certainly take a decrease. That was a year over year decrease of about 5%. Now, 2 years, June, we were about 414,670, and we dropped to 372. So that was definitely a much bigger decrease over 2 years. Now, a lot of people like to use the word or throw around the word crashing. The market's crashing here in Cape Coral. And if you try to look up a definition of what that means, or how do I know if the market's crashing, you get all kinds of different information, and there's nothing direct or straight. But from what I found, the best information, and what I would go with, is a 20% decrease in property values over 12 to 18 months is a crashing market. Now, we are from where we peaked at in April 2022 to today, we're at about a 20% decrease over 3 years. So did the market crash? No. Did it correct? Absolutely. Look where we came from though. 250,000 to 465, back to 375. I would not call that crashing. It's definitely a correction, but we're still a long ways off from where we started. Let's get back to another thing I want to point out to you is in 2022, where we peaked at 465 in April 2022, interest rates started increasing rather quickly. And then in September of 2022, we had Hurricane Ian go through, which did a lot of damage to Cape Coral. It's the worst hurricane that's ever hit Cape Coral, and it did a lot of damage, which hurt the market. And by the end of the year, we were at a median price point of $399,995. That was almost a 14% decrease from the middle of the year, April 2022, the whole way to December 2022. Now, what that did is brought the price to 400, and then where we've been, and like I keep talking about, for the last couple of years, we've just been up and down and all around. We've been around 400,000. We went up a little bit, and then once we get into the fall, we go down a little bit. Once we get into the season, we went up a little bit, and then we went down a little bit. And then for 2025, we didn't come up as much. We did hit 399,950 in February, and then we started dropping a little bit more as we got further along in the year. But one of the things that I can point out too, from December 2022 until today, we're only down about 7%. So that big drop, that quote unquote crash, was from April 2022 to December 2022. And that was due mainly because of interest rates increasing rather rapidly. And we had a hurricane go through in September, which did not help Cape Coral's real estate market at all. But year to date, year over year, we're at about a negative 5% from 392 to 372. And as we go into the fall months, we may see that start to drop just a bit. We did come up from last month. So we're going to monitor that and see exactly what happens. But I don't see it going much further down. Okay, let's see what's next. So the area's home prices have declined for 12 out of past 13 months, and 52% of the homes have experienced price cuts, according to Parcel Labs, a real estate data analytics company. While that is more than nearly anywhere else in the U.S., neighboring communities such as Sarasota and Tampa are in a similar bind. Now, let's be realistic, though. Let's jump back to this screen here. And when we talk about price decreases, many people that live here saw their neighbors sell their house in 2022, in 2021, and they made a huge amount of money. However, we dropped pretty fast, and by 2023, we were right around the $400,000 mark. In Cape Coral, there's still a lot of people, even though we're 2.5 years, 3 years out from where our peak was, that still believe that their home is worth what it was in 2022. And that's where the challenge comes into place. That's why people overprice their homes, because they're assuming that they should get at least how much the home sold for in 2022. And no matter, there's some good realtors out there and there's some bad ones, but most realtors will inform their clients that, look, this is where we're at. This is the reality of it. We're 20% lower. So based on where we were at then, we need to price that home about 20% lower in order to get it to move on the market. Now, if we go back to 465 down to 375, that's almost a 20% discount. So that's where homes need to be priced. However, people have other expectations, and that's what's led to the increase in decreasing prices. We're seeing price cuts all the time. We did see it start to slow now a little bit in my last market report, not quite as much as it has been. I think people are becoming more and more realistic in what's happening in the market, and we're being able to educate folks better. So prices have fallen 12 of the last 13 months. Prices have dropped quite a bit. I shouldn't say quite a bit, but they have dropped. So 392, 389, that dropped. 390, that went back up. 379, that went down, back up. 390, they've been fluctuating for sure. And then once we got into 2025, we did see more of a decrease. However, in February, they were 399 and 380, 375, 370. And then we did see an increase in June to 372.5. So up and down, but we are declining down at the moment. So we're going to keep an eye on that. Okay, let's go ahead on to the next. Cape Coral also has the most homeowners underwater in the country, with nearly 8% owing more on their mortgages than their homes are worth. Okay, well, first and foremost, 8% is not a terrible number. However, it's not even a concern at all unless you absolutely need to sell your house right now. Because as we know in real estate, house values always go back up. It's just a waiting period, and they're going to go back up. But it might be next year, it might be the year following, or it might be the year after that. But there's a lot of variables at play right now. So being underwater is not really a concern. You just keep paying your mortgage payment, and then you'll be able to sell your house eventually. Now, with that being said, if you did purchase your house in 2021, let's see where we're at. So 2025, we're at $372,500. When were we at the last at that amount? So we have to go back to November of 2021 to beat that number. So if you bought your home at the end of 2021, you're probably underwater from what you can sell it for. So if you bought your home in this time frame, I highly recommend that you hold on to your house unless you absolutely need to sell it because you're moving out of town, you're relocating, something along those lines. But if you don't need to sell it, I recommend holding it until the market turns and goes back the other direction. Now, with that being said, anybody that bought their house in the middle of 2021 or any time before that has a huge amount of equity in their house. So even though there's 8% underwater, the majority of homeowners in Cape Coral, have a ton of equity, which is a big shield against our foreclosure issue. And many of the houses that were even bought during this time frame in 2021, 2022 were actually cash purchases as well. So those homes are fairly secure when it comes to the foreclosure market. This agent recently hosted an open house in Cape Coral. The home bought 3 years ago by an investor looking to rent it on Airbnb is fully furnished and has a pool. The asking price started at $675,000, but the seller has cut it to less than $500,000, about $100,000 below the purchase price. It has been on and off the market for a year and has received 0 offers. Okay, first of all, that's a lot to unpack as well. If a house has 0 offers and it's been on the market for over a year, there's either something terribly wrong with the property itself, the home itself, or the price is just really high. Like the expectations are well beyond what's possible. But here's something interesting. He says less than $500,000 is about $100,000 below the purchase price. So if he bought it for $600,000 back in 2022 at the height of the market, and the market's come down 20% since then, which would be right around just under $500,000. Why did they price it at $675,000? There was no way that house was going to sell at $675,000 a year ago or today, because we know that prices went down about 20%. So realistically, it should sell just under $500,000 in today's market. And I did some research and I was able to find this house, and it's actually pending now. So congratulations on that. That's excellent. And it went pending for right around $480,000. So when you align a home and you price it according to the market, you're going to sell it. It's not going to just sit on the market and we just throw our arms up and say, we don't know what's happening. No, we do know what's happening. We're watching the market. And also with this house, it's been on and off the market for a year and has received 0 offers. If you're going to sell a house, you have to keep it on the market. This house was taken off the market in January, February, March, and then part of April, which those are the busiest times down here. So why that house was taken off the market during that time frame, I'm not sure, but yeah. So we're cutting prices. We're cutting the price further tomorrow. So they did cut the price further. They put it under $500,000, and it looks like it's pending and under contract. So that's excellent for them. Another thing that we're looking at here is change in median home price from prior year Cape Coral metro area. Now, this is just a silly graph because this gives you the impression that prices now in 2025 are below where they were in 2018. But change in median home price from prior year. So this is just comparing it to prior year in thousands of dollars. So yes, we are down according to the prior year. And of course, in 2022 to 2023, we dropped substantially. But again, our prices now, let's compare it to 2000. Well, let's just go back to 2020 because they're even less in 2018, but it's 372 now, 250,000 back in 2020. So prices are certainly a lot higher than they were in 2018. But that graph just it's kind of misleading. I don't like that, but we were able to chat about it. So hopefully you have a better understanding. Now, housing markets throughout the U.S. are grappling with one or more of the factors that can hurt home prices and sales, including high mortgage rates. So everyone in the United States is dealing with higher mortgage rates. But Cape Coral is suffering from nearly every affliction that can cause a housing market to slump. Wow. So that just makes it sound like we have all of the problems here in Cape Coral. However, we do have some challenges, but if you have a skilled agent, we're able to work our way through that. So the metro area of about 800,000 is feeling the effects of elevated home prices, ballooning insurance premiums and property taxes, natural disasters, a return to the office for remote workers, and waning demand from investors after a glut of building in the area brought rental prices down. It's another big one to uncover. Let's chat. Let's get into this one. So metro area over elevated prices. So yes, effects of elevated prices. Prices jumped quite a bit in 2021 and 22. And people's wages were not able to keep up with that. Ballooning insurance premiums. Insurance premiums have increased. However, in most areas of Cape Coral, insurance premiums haven't gone through the roof. They're still very manageable. They haven't gone up all that much, but they have increased a bit. Now, there are certain areas of Cape Coral that have seen substantial increases. So that is true. Usually it's older properties properties that have been damaged, properties that are in very low-lying areas that require higher insurance premiums. And property taxes, ballooning property taxes. Now, property taxes are only ballooning if it's your second home or it's an investment, because we have this thing in Cape Coral, or all of Florida for that matter, it's called the homestead exemption. And when you buy a home and you make it your personal residence, your taxes will only go up, your assessed value on your home will only go up about 3% per year. So even though prices skyrocketed and the assessed values went up quite a bit, if it's your primary residence, you've locked it in to where it can only go up 3% per year, which is excellent. Now, if it's a second home or a vacation home or an investment, then those property taxes, what can go up, the assessed value can go up 10% per year, which is quite substantial. And that's where people are seeing their property taxes jump here in Cape Coral, is people that own second homes or investments. Natural disasters. So natural disasters is certainly something we deal with here in the state of Florida. However, if we want to really talk about it, in the last 60 years since Cape Coral's been a city, we've only had 5 hurricanes pass within 25 miles of the city of Cape Coral. And only one of those hurricanes, Hurricane Ian in 2022, actually did some real major damage to the city. And it was bad. It was devastating here in the city of Cape Coral. However, we've built back stronger and everything is moving right along and we're loving life once again. So natural disasters is a real concern. However, with that being said, we've only had one major hurricane here in the last 60 years. So I don't see that being a big detriment to a lot of the people that live here or the people moving here now that I've been talking with. A return to office for remote workers. That is true. A lot of people came down to Florida, remote workers, because it's a great opportunity for someone to make the income where you are currently at, maybe in New York, Chicago, LA, Denver, Connecticut, Boston, all over the place. People were coming down, remote workers that were making the money up there, and they were coming down here and working from home. However, many of those companies started calling their employees back to work, and they had to make that choice whether they were going to either stay here in Cape Coral or move back north once again. And waning demand from investors after a glut of building in the area brought rental prices down. Very true. Cape Coral is not a hugely investor-friendly market right now because rents have started dropping, and that's in big part because in the last 3 to 5 years, they've built well over 10 large apartment complexes throughout the city. They call them luxury apartment complexes, but we have a ton of rental units that are sitting here right now. And so that's making it really hard for the small investor that wanted to buy the house and rent it out long-term. The rents just aren't where they were last year or the year prior. I mean, they're still higher than they were in 2018, 2019. So as long as they bought the house prior to then, they're still doing just fine. However, what I do like to say, these apartment complexes came in, these corporations, and they built these huge developments for rentals. They understand the market and they understand that Cape Coral is on the verge of explosion, and there is a little bit of catching up period now. But I believe in the next couple of years, we're still going to explode and property values are going to increase substantially. D.R. Horton just bought a piece of land in the northern part of Cape Coral, paid $100 million for it. Over the next few years, they're going to be building 3,500 houses there. These big builders don't come into markets that are falling apart and putting down money like that unless they understand that the market's going to turn and a lot of people are going to continue to move here. Now, with that being said, we're still seeing 400 or 500 home sales every single month here in the city of Cape Coral. So we still have a lot of people moving here for sure. At the height of the recent Florida migration frenzy, Lee County, where Cape Coral is located, had 3,500 homes available for sale. Now there are 12,000 listed. Let's go back and take a look. Right now in the city of Cape Coral, we have 2,994 listed single-family homes on the market in Cape Coral. That's the number. When I pull up the MLS, I check the MLS. It's actually, today I checked it, and it was 2,970 some. So we're actually dropping even further. Now let's go back the whole way to where we were in 2022. May 2022, at the height, we were at 1,219 homes for sale on the market, which that's why homes were selling so fast. The median day on the market was 5. The home was sitting on the market for 5 days before it was taken off the market under contract. If we go to today, median days on the market is 55. But anyways, back to the inventory, 2,994. That's quite a big jump from where we were. However, one of the things I always like to talk about with people is the months of inventory. Currently in the city of Cape Coral, we're sitting at 6.5 months of inventory. That's based on the amount of inventory compared to how many buyers we had in the month of June. And anything between 4 and 6 months is considered a neutral market. Anything over 6 months is a buyer's market. We're just barely in a buyer's market. So anyone that says that we're crashing, that we're falling apart, that nobody's buying in Cape Coral anymore is absolutely false. There's no truth to that. We're at 6.5. That number will increase probably over the next couple of months as we get into our slower season. But at 6.5 months of inventory, we're certainly not in dire straits. And if that's the worst market in the United States isn't doing half bad right now. Okay, moving right along. With so much supply, very little demand, and seller base where over 50% are cutting prices, I would expect this downward trend to continue. Now, so much supply, very little demand. Let's go back and take a look at the numbers. Now, we do have supply, 2,994. But we do have buyers too. Closed sales, 461 in the month of June, 525 in the month of May, 497 buyers in April, 540 in March, 333 in February. We have buyers here. We're sitting at 6.5 months of inventory. That's not a huge amount of inventory. We're at 2,994. I would ideally, in a Cape Coral, a city our size with over 240,000 people, I would say a good market would be right around 2,500 to 2,700 houses on the market at all times. So 2,994, we're a bit high, but it's not time to panic by any stretch of the imagination. With so much supply, very little demand. Now, we do have a lot of demand here. We would have had even more demand. And one of the other things that to take into account is that our Canadian friends did not come down this year like they typically do. Due to some political stuff happening, we typically see a large Canadian population here, and they just didn't show up. The buyers weren't here from Canada this year, and many of the folks that do own homes here did put their homes on the market, adding to that inventory. So hopefully we get that resolved and our Canadian friends are back next year. Well, let's jump further along. Okay, let's see what's next. These folks live in one of the most sought after neighborhoods in the city, in a house with all hardwood cabinets, high ceilings, and a pool. That sounds like about every house we offer here in the city of Cape Coral. They didn't think they would have to wait too long to sell it. 15 price cuts, and 2 years later, they still haven't had a suitable offer. Now, to me, it sounds like they've been chasing the market. It wasn't priced from the beginning. They keep going down a little bit, and they're just chasing the market down. The market's well ahead of them. So until they make a price cut that's aligned with what the market's going to pay for that house, they're having challenges, and they will continue to have challenges. Now, I don't know when they bought their house, and so maybe they will take a loss. It says, I just hope that we end up selling, it's not so far down below our asking price that it puts us in debt. And that's unfortunate. And if somebody bought in 2023, if they bought in 2021, 2022, and even some parts of 2023, they are underwater. And if they have to sell, it puts them in a real bind. So hopefully these folks weren't there. Hopefully they bought it prior to that. The area's apartment market is also sagging. New developments are offering deep concessions. As of May, 64% of all multifamily properties were offering some kind of concession, more than double the rate a year earlier. And again, we talked about this, apartment complexes, some corporations, many corporations came in and bought or built several different apartment communities here in Cape Coral, luxury apartment communities, and it really put a dent in our rental market as far as availability. There's so much availability there, but they created that and they understand the market. And right now, there are a lot of units available. However, they understand what's going to be happening here in the next few years in Cape Coral, and they're well prepared and ahead of the market. Now, hurricanes have punished the west coast of Florida each year since 2022. Many homes have flooded, insurance prices rose as insurers abandoned the state. I think punished is a strong word. Certainly Hurricane Ian punished Cape Coral, and we were set back for several months while new roofs were being put on, flooded homes were being remodeled and repaired. However, when it talks about many homes flooded, that is true, and it's important to understand where those homes were located. And most of those homes were located in some of the most desirable areas of Cape Coral. So when moving to Cape Coral, you need to understand your risk tolerance and what you're willing to put up with or concern yourself with if a flood was potential, if the storm surge came again. Usually when a hurricane passes to the north of us, that's when we're going to see that storm surge, that water being pushed up the river and into the canals and then potentially into your house. So it's important to understand, number one, what your risk tolerance is. Number two, you need to have a great agent that understands the geography of the city, that understands the houses that were flooded, where they were at. So if that's something that you don't want to be in a home that was flooded, you can get a lot of great homes here in Cape Coral that were remodeled just recently. They have beautiful finishes, but many of those homes were flooded. So you need to understand that and understand which homes those were. And a good agent like myself is able to identify those homes and then, of course, go over your risk tolerance with you and give you advice on where you should be buying based on that risk tolerance. Insurance prices rose as insurers abandoned the state. We did see insurance rates go up a bit, not huge for most of us. However, there are a few areas, especially in some of those flooded areas and for older homes, where insurance rates did increase substantially. So again, that's just understanding that geography of Cape Coral, where those areas are at, and having a good agent that understands that. At the same time, new state regulations meant to fortify condominium buildings after a condo collapse killed 98 people in Miami are pummeling the market. Condo owners are dumping their apartments on the market because they can't afford what can amount to six-figure special assessments. Now, there are people that are dealing with these assessments, and that's mainly on the East Coast. A word of caution of this new regulation says that if you live in a condo that's 3 stories or higher, then once it's hit 25 years of age, if it's further than once it hits 25 years, if it's closer than 3 miles to the coast, you have to have a special inspection done of the foundation. Now, if it's more than 3 miles, it's every 30 years, or it's the first 30 years, and then it goes after that. But you have to be really aware. So if you're thinking about buying a condo that's probably older than 20 years, 20 or older, you need to understand the risks there and the potential for added expenses. Because if something is found, if the foundation is not up to speed, if the something's wrong, that's going to go back to the condo owners, and that's where those assessments are going to get absolutely insane. So it is important to have a great agent that understands the regulations, and also understands the building itself and what you're getting into. But tread lightly if you are buying into older properties that are 3 stories or higher. There is no job opportunity, said this lady who moved to Cape Coral in 2022 from Chicago, mostly because of a request by her employer, a general contractor for the retail sector. She was laid off last year. Now, there is some truth to this. Jobs here, and like we've talked about before, jobs are a challenge here in the city of Cape Coral and for the Fort Myers area. Unless you're in healthcare, unless you have a trade, maybe you're a plumber or maybe you're electrician, something like that, jobs can be a bit challenging. Our wages here are not up to speed when it comes to our housing market. So, and then even folks that have come down from the north, that maybe they're working up there and they were making $35 an hour, and then they get to Cape Coral and now they're making $25 an hour for the exact same job. It doesn't translate to work out for them. And that's why I think the people that are most disappointed that do move here from the north are moving here. Maybe they're moving from a bigger city where they had some strong jobs, and then they moved here trying to get that exact same type of job here, and it just doesn't pan out for them as well. Or maybe that job doesn't even exist here, and so they're starting to try something different. A lot of people are drawn to the sunshine, like I was myself, but however, it can be a bit disappointing and discouraging if you move here and your expectations are set too high. So I always recommend, yes, if you're working remotely, that's great to be here. If you're retired, that's amazing. If you're buying a second home, that's incredible as well. However, if you are moving here with your family, or you need to have a job here to support yourself or your family, you need to understand what the market is. And I highly, highly recommend that you come down and scout the market out. Transfer with your company. If you can transfer down here, that's great. but make sure that you have a job lined up before just coming on down, because that's led to the biggest disappointment in people moving here and then eventually selling and moving back. And we don't want you moving back because the sunshine is absolutely amazing. I will never go back north again. And I'm from Denver, Colorado. I love Denver. It's a beautiful city, but it snows there. It gets cold there. I'm not going back. Okay. She has just opened a permanent makeup studio and is struggling to find clients during the off season. Cape Coral is certainly a seasonal city. Not as seasonal as, say, maybe Naples or some other areas, but we do have a season here. We do get a lot busier when the weather turns cold up north. The snow starts to fly. Those snowbirds come on down and they help fuel our economy here in Cape Coral. So there is truth to that. We do see less wait times at the restaurants in the off season, in the summer months, in the fall. We see the beach loosen up. It's a great time to go to the beach in the summertime. I love it. I shouldn't say it's empty because I was there just this last weekend and there were a lot of people there, but it's easier to get to the beach. You don't have to wait for a half an hour going over the bridge. So absolutely amazing here in the summertime. However, if you have a business here, business can dry up and be a little bit more challenging in these in the late summer months and then fall. With that being said, though, from where we were just about 10 to 15 years ago, we're actually seeing Cape Coral reinvent itself with a lot more families and permanent residents moving here. So that's growing, and it's not as big of a factor as it was 10, 15, 20 years ago. She's glad she decided to rent because she would have bought a home at the height of the market. So definitely in her situation, that worked out, that she didn't buy a home because she may have lost some money or been underwater, which wouldn't have been ideal, it sounds like, for her, especially since she's having challenges with the job. So the cost of living down here doesn't match the wages, 100%. That is very true. And again, that's why I just said you need to understand what you're going to get paid before you move down here. Unless you're retired, it's your second home or you're working remotely. This is paradise, but there's no work. Everyone's begging for work. 100%, this is paradise. I love living in Cape Coral. If you love the water, you love fishing, boating, island hopping, going to the beach, Cape Coral is the place for you. It's paradise. However, there is no work. There's jobs here. It's just a little bit challenging and everyone's begging for work. Not everyone's begging for work. That might be a strong term, but again, figure it out before you come down and do your research. Give me a call. We'll chat about it and see if what your job is, or it would make sense for you being down here in the Cape Coral area. It might make more sense for you to go to Tampa, Orlando, Miami, Fort Lauderdale, depending on exactly what your job is and your qualifications. Home builders who can no longer make their numbers work have pulled out of some construction projects, offering them for sale as is. And that is true. But like I said, there's only about 9 to 10 homes on the market right now that are half-built shells that would give other builders the opportunity to come in. One project, a partially constructed concrete block home, is listed at $190,000. The home sits on a freshwater canal. The drywall is up, but the roof is incomplete. Without doors or windows, the home is exposed to the elements. A faint line of water damage and spotted mold is visible on the ceilings of 2 rooms where small spiders have settled in. Now, this has happened, and like I just said, 9 or 10 of these houses on the market. There's actually more of those around Cape Coral. I would say maximum, maybe 20, 25 in the whole city of Cape Coral that would fall into this bill. Some will eventually be torn down because the builders just couldn't complete them. They didn't have the money to do that. However, there's still many builders that are completing homes here. It's not like all the builders left, the homes are sitting vacant and Cape Coral's falling apart. No, we still see about 120 new homes come to the market, 120, 150 new homes come to the market every single month that the builders are putting out there. So a lot of builders are still here. However, they have started to decrease a little bit in their production just to kind of hold back and play it a little bit smart until they see exactly what's happening. Where small spiders have settled in. This is Florida, Cape Coral. We do have spiders here. We have palmetto bugs, lizards, alligators, geckos, iguanas. We've got it all kinds of fun. A few small spiders. I'm sure that's not a big deal. Definitely important to have an exterminator if you're going to live here in Southwest Florida. Investors are also running for the exits. Some rented out their homes, but are now competing with cheaper multifamily developments. The city's Airbnb rentals drew less interest as soon as Americans began traveling abroad again.
So investors also are running for the exits. Some builders are slowing down, or they're not building here anymore. However, not all, because we are still seeing many homes being built here in the city of Cape Coral in anticipation for the people that keep moving here. Some rented out their homes, but are now competing with cheaper multifamilies. We discussed that. A lot of multifamilies have been built up over the last few years, a substantial amount, far more than what we can handle at the moment. However, that has hurt the little guy investor that's trying to rent out his single family home or his duplex. That's really affected him. But if he bought it prior to 2021, he's still sitting in a good spot and nothing to be concerned about. If he did buy it in the last couple of years, then there may be a challenge. Now, the city's Airbnb rentals drew less interest as soon as America's. Now, that's true. I mean, but we're certainly still an Airbnb market here in Cape Coral. We still attract a lot of snowbirds every single winter and spring. However, when the Airbnb started taking off right around the pandemic, all over the country, they started doing big money. The market got saturated. We had a lot of people come into the market and buy up homes all over the place, $1 million homes, and even 500,000, just all kinds of different types of product. They started buying those up. It got saturated. The expectation was there. We had too many of them. And like I said, you have to set your expectations correctly. I think Airbnb is a great option if you're buying a second home or a vacation home that you plan to use or you plan to retire in someday, and you just need someone to help you make the mortgage payments. But if you're coming into the Cape Coral market expecting to make a profit on an Airbnb rental, it's just not the case right now. It's just not likely that that's going to happen unless you're like the master marketer and you can really market your Airbnb. But they're great to use to rent out your retirement home or your vacation home, your second home. However, your best time to get money on those is going to be January, February, March, April. And obviously that's the time, if you live in the north, that you want to use it yourself. So you have to be smart and try to get it rented out when the best times are there, and then come down and use it in the summer or the fall when the rents or the demand's not there. But yes, a lot of people did come down, buy up Airbnbs. Now they're struggling because they're not being able to make the mortgage payment because they bought them in 2021, 2022, and they're having some challenges. These buyers have stopped investing in Cape Coral. Yeah, some people have stopped investing in Cape Coral. Not all have. We're still seeing investors come into the market. And right now, some are starting to actually pick up some really good opportunities. His aunt is one of them. She recently sold a rental home at a $200,000 loss when the fundamentals stopped adding up. It was either keep losing $49,000 a year or just off it and get the tax break on the loss, he said. I don't know what the house sold for. I don't know what the house was purchased for. But anyone that took a $200,000 loss, that's a big deal. And that's unfortunate. Losing $49,000 a year, I don't know how you're doing that unless, I don't know what type of house this was. Maybe it was a multi-million-dollar property, but losing $49,000 a year seems like a big stretch unless there were some other challenges going on there as well. The foreclosure boat tours, that was happening back in 2008, 2009. Okay, Cape Coral was also the epicenter of the 2008 subprime mortgage crisis. At that time, cheap credit and a lack of regulation led to rampant speculation, with amateur investors scoping up multiple properties without putting any money down. When renters suddenly pulled out, those property owners went bankrupt. Sean Dean lived through the collapse while owning 5 different properties in the area. When his renters suddenly moved out within a 2-week period, he sold 2 houses and the banks took over the other 3. That was a challenge. There's truth to that. Of all the markets in the United States, Cape Coral was one of the worst markets. Because of that, a lot of people own second homes here, investments, and when the market turned, the prices dropped and people went belly up. They couldn't make their payments because the renters were moving out as well. Are we anywhere near that right now? Absolutely not. Mortgages, well, I think we talk about that on down here. So yeah, I couldn't get rid of them, said Dean. So he couldn't sell the houses. He couldn't get rid of them. So the bank took 3 of them. Now this time, many Cape Coral homes were bought with cash. That's so true. 2021, 2022, a large percentage of the homes were bought with cash. So there's no concern of them foreclosing. With that being said, most of the homes were bought before 2021 here in Cape Coral, which means they all have loads of equity in them. Another thing that means if the people can't make the payments, the homeowners can't make the payments, then they're probably just going to sell them. So that's not a concern. We have 8% of people underwater where they owe more on their house than what it's worth. Not a huge number. And as we looked at the foreclosure numbers, we're not seeing huge numbers there either right now. New regulations require strict underwriting and more money down. Still, economic uncertainty and the increasing cost of home ownership are causing prices to fall fast again. Prices are falling. Are they falling fast? They're falling about 5% year over year. We're going to keep an eye on it. Two things that are going to happen that are going to make prices go back the other direction. One is going to be interest rates going back down. If they go below 6% for any length of time, I say for about 3 months, we're going to see prices start to jump. The other thing is certainty in the economy. We've had a lot of uncertainty in the economy in the last few months. Ever since started talking about tariffs and the market went up, the market went down, the market went up, the market went. So there's just a lot of uncertainty. So people aren't real sure what to expect. They want to see things level out just a bit. However, our unemployment is still very strong. Interest rates are starting to decrease a bit. Right now, they're about the lowest as they've been all year, right around 6.75, somewhere in that range. And inflation is down around 2.4, 2.3 as we speak. So they want to get that below 2%. But I know Trump is pushing the Federal Reserve to lower interest rates. So we'll see how much success he has there. But if those interest rates do come down, that's when prices are going to go around the corner. So pay attention where that's at. Now, Keith moved from New Jersey, is also pivoting from construction work to starting a salad restaurant. So he believes in the Cape Coral economy. He believes that it's moving in the right direction. He's opening up a business here. At the same time, he is selling his waterfront home with access to the Gulf to move further inland. The property tax and the flood insurance are going to go up so high in the next 5 years that it's not worth staying here, he said. Well, there's fallacy in the first part of that. The property tax is not going to go up so high because it can only go up 3% if it's his primary resident. Unless it's not his primary resident, maybe he lives up north and this is his second home. If that's the case, then yes, interest or taxes are going to go up. But it doesn't matter where he moves to, whether he's in South Cape Coral, North Cape Coral, his taxes are going to be the same. And the flood insurance are going to go up. And I think flood insurance is kind of leveled out. We haven't really seen a lot of increases this year. We've seen a little bit, but depending on where you're at, maybe he was in a very low elevation area in an older house, which was have very high flood insurance. But others are going to keep going up substantially over the next 5 years? I don't believe so, unless we have a major catastrophe here in the next few years. That could happen. But being that we've only had one major catastrophe in the last 60 years, I'm not expecting that to happen. Okay, so that just covered the Wall Street Journal article. I hope you found some helpful information in there. Go ahead and reach out to me if you have any questions. If you're thinking about buying, selling, investing, or relocating here, maybe you're thinking about retiring here in Cape Coral, I'd love to chat with you, put together a strategy for helping you get here. We can start to go over the different quadrants of Cape Coral, what may work for you, what may not work for you, and just really help you understand the market. If you're one of those people that's sitting on the sidelines and waiting, like many of the people I chat with, understand the market is changing and it's going down a bit more over the next few months. What happens next season, January, February, March, April, still remains to be seen. There's a lot of variables that could happen. But my advice to you is don't stay up there another winter in the cold, the gray skies, shoveling walks, scraping windshields, risking falling in the ice when you could be down here in the beautiful city of Cape Coral enjoying life. Don't risk saving a few $1,000s and not being here to stay up there when you can take advantage of these great prices now. Sellers are motivated. Articles like this are making them more motivated. So take advantage of that. Get the great discounts. And if you're a seller, don't be wary. Price your home accordingly to what the market's going to pay for it, and then sell your home. If you don't have to sell, you might want to hold on to it for another year or two. That's this article on the Wall Street Journal. A lot of great information in here, a lot of information not so great. They definitely brought attention to the city of Cape Coral, and that they say all publicity, whether it's negative or positive, is good publicity. So if you'd like more information on Cape Coral, I'd love to chat with you. go ahead and hit the link in the description below to book your strategy call with me, or you're welcome to call, text, or email me. Look forward to chatting with you, making realty dreams reality here in the beautiful city of Cape Coral. Have a great day.